And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Alexandra Horowitz. Dr. Horowitz is a dog cognition expert and the head of the dog cognition lab at Barnard College. She's the best-selling author of Inside of a Dog, What Dogs See, Smell, and Know, and 4 other books, including her most recent work, The Year of the Puppy. And then this past February, she wrote a beautiful essay for the New York Times entitled Finnegan, Dog Known for His Exemplary Nose, Dies at 14, which you'll hear more about tonight. Dr. Horowitz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks everyone who is here. I'm really honored to be with you tonight. As Michelle said, I study dogs. I'm a scientist about what dogs know, what they perceive, basically how they experience the world. And I'm also a writer about dogs. So they're my subjects. I observe them for a living, but I also live with dogs and a cat. And I'm still in the habit of saying I live with 3 dogs. That's Finnegan, also known as Finn or Kiddo or Mr. Nose. He was a kind of professional dog scientist's dog. He went with me everywhere. Every event I had to do, he could appear at and be the demonstration of the perfect quintessential doggy dog. And Upton, who was a really goofy, large dog. Actually, he's right there behind me. And Quiddity, the puppy. But 2 of them we lost this year, Finnegan in January and then Upton in February. So here we are. So tonight I don't want to lecture. I'm probably just going to cry. But really, I just wanted to reflect on a few things. One is what I did with some of my grief. You know, I'm a writer because of dogs. I was a scientist of dogs, but it was the dog in front of me who I lived with, who I observed every day, who prompted me to write about them, to make the science relevant to others in their lives and their relationships with their animals, like it was relevant to me. As a result, you know, I was thus afforded the opportunity, as Michelle mentioned, to write about Finnegan, who died in January, and publish the piece in the New York Times. And I did so in honor of him, but also the way he'd always been part of my thinking about dogs in general, not just him specifically. I used it to think about why we don't see obituaries of animals often in the New York Times or in other papers. My essay about him ran in the op-ed section, not the obituary section. Of course, there are a lot of pieces in the Times about the death of non-human animals. But I was struck when I thought about writing a piece about Finn that he wouldn't be considered a subject of an obituary to the Times. And that's funny to me because obituaries are commemorations of people of meaning, you know, of someone's life. And animals are someone's and have lives and have stories. And in fact, you are the person to tell that story. Writing his obituary helped me tremendously because it is a celebration, an obituary. It's a reflection, it's an acknowledgement of the meaning of this animal in your life, in others' lives who they contacted. It's a way to keep the thoughts of them real, to keep them around. Part of what is hard for me is the animal's disappearance, when what's more significant than we know about the animals in our lives is their constant presence. The second thing I want to reflect on is just grief itself. After I published that obituary, I received a lot of letters, and some of them were letters of appreciation, almost of relief that I had written about my dog. Not as a scientist, but as a person who knew an animal, whose family member, whose non-human family member was meaningful to them. And I think there's still people who feel like culturally they should be afraid to show their grief, how important an animal is to their life. And I hope that the obituary demonstrated that I very firmly believe that one should not be afraid to show that grief, that it's a real grief that can and should be acknowledged by others. They are family members. The third thing I want to reflect on just for a moment, if you will indulge me, is a little bit about Finn and Upton. And I actually wrote about them in the book that is to be published next week, which is really about the first year of the puppy, the third dog in our triad's life, Quid. And when she was 2 was when they died. So I'm just going to read this very short postscript I wrote in the book. It's 1 year later. This was the first year of Quid's life. Quid has turned 2, and we have just lost Finnegan and Upton 4 weeks apart. Our family is suddenly changed, and a yawning hole is at its center. The dogs filled every second of our days, and now their absence is felt in all those moments. It takes form in longing, in grief that they're gone, in melancholic remembrance. I miss Finn's winsome smile, formed of his panting mouth, soft eyes, and wagging tail. I miss Upton's howl at dinner time, his kilter tail and his gangly run. In the house, I miss simply sharing the space with them, hearing them shake when rising, their toenails on the floorboards, their cadence up the stairs, their breath and muffled noises in sleep. Outside, I miss them on their explorations, feeling the invisible rubber band that joined us as we moved at our respective paces through a forest or park. Finn always circling back to us, Upton pulled farther by distant scents. I miss them galloping down the hall when I came home, circling around me and knocking my legs with their tails. I miss the way Finn would push his nose into my hand to guide me to pet his face and tickle his ear. I miss Upton's pawing of the air to ask us to continue rubbing the soft, folded fur on his chest. These dogs were worked into the fabric of our lives, into the sinews of our bodies. Quid lies on her back next to me now, head thrust backward, legs reaching to the ceiling, quiet. I stroke her ear aimlessly. These dogs. Thanks very much.